Hey, good evening, everyone. State Representative Brad Halbrook, Tuesday night live stream round table in Town Hall. I'm joined with Dan Caucus, Freedom Caucus member from the Fighting 88th. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you again. I know I missed last week. We had another engagement, but glad I can join you tonight, Brad.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. And again, we're graced with our state director of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Colin Mosley. Welcome, Colin.
Hey, thanks, Brad. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, guys, we're going to get right into this. We've got a few things we want to touch on from our big budget week last week. And like if you've heard us before in the past, we say nothing good goes on in Springfield till after dark. And it's better when it's night and weekends and a holiday weekend, no less, as we worked into the wee hours of this past Saturday morning going into Memorial Day weekend. So with that, guys, I'm going to bring on a slide here and let's just talk to it. Of course, here's our first slide, just kind of going to talk about the budget waste, the government waste last week. And let me click through the next slide. Hey, look at that. It worked. So, right. Dan, we were supposed to adjourn Friday, May 19th, and that didn't happen.
February, March, April, May. That's 4 months. We knew when we went into session in January that the calendar showed adjournment on May 19th. 4 months. The Democrats had 4 months to get their stuff together. How'd they do?
Well, they missed it by a week and a few hours.
Yeah, no
which seems to be kind of the case. Yeah. Well, and the other part here, bullet point number 2 is an additional approximate 200,000. Colin, I know you kind of did some research on this. This is dramatically higher, or just continues to get higher all the time when they have these special days or additional days for us to be back in Springfield.
Well, that's right. I mean, because you think about it, immediately, the first dollar figure I went to is the legislative per diem, which has raised over the last few years. But, anytime Springfield is in session overnight, it's an immediate $150 or something trigger per member. You talk about travel costs for people, additional costs for staff at the Capitol, security, all the money that's spent to operate the place, all because of, irresponsible government under the hand of Speaker Chris Welch, President Don Harmon, and Governor Pritzker.
Yeah. And to Dan's point, they've known about this since the 1st of January. They knew when this day was coming, right?
Right. Yep, absolutely.
And so the way it played out last week was the budget bill, SB 250, hit the Senate late on Wednesday. But I guess, Dan, they had the governor and Speaker Welch and President Harmon, they had a press conference Tuesday afternoon, about 3 o'clock or 3:30. It was an hour late getting started. And they told us everything was agreed to.
Yeah, it was agreed to. All right. Yeah, it was agreed that we were going to have a budget. It just wasn't agreed to what was in it.
Evidently, they didn't tell the rest of their members what they had agreed to.
No, and this is the gang that can't shoot straight. It's actually it's pretty disgraceful, really, and I mean, these people are inconsiderate. Mm-hmm. Their management skills are really poor, and God knows how much it cost us. This horse trading, whatever you want to call it, buying of votes, I think is probably the clearest thing that we could say to people. I don't know, what do they have, $1.5 billion of slush fund money set aside that they can pay off their members with and projects in their district and God knows what. Anyway.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get into that.
Well, right. And I guess just as before we get into just a few numbers, and again, guys, this between the two bills, the BIMP, which was the budget implementation plan, and the actual budget, it's over 4,000 pages, I think. Colin, I'm not sure, was it 3,400 and some pages on the one and 800 pages on the other one, I think, maybe?
That's accurate.
Yeah, so it's something over 4,000 pages. But so they had the press conference Tuesday afternoon. It was an hour late getting started. They said everybody's agreed to this stuff, but the bill doesn't actually hit the Senate until 30 some hours later. And sometime late on Wednesday, it finally hit the Senate. And then Colin, I think they passed it out of the Senate, got it into the House about 11:45 Wednesday night. So this thing's got to be read, right? It's got to be read 3 times in the record or 3 days on the calendar. And so it hit at 11:45 on Wednesday night, was read into the record on Thursday. Hoping to get my right. And then Friday, we came back Friday evening, going into Memorial Day weekend. We came back in at 5:00 between caucus meetings starting late and committee meetings. I don't think we come back to the House floor till literally 10:00 Friday night.
Right. Well, I mean, they schedule a 5 p.m. session time Friday, which very clearly means you're going to waste the entire morning when you could have been doing all the things we did in that late night hour period. But why would you do things that are evil and disastrous when everyone else is awake? So you come to the House floor finally after caucus and committees and shoving things in late. And finally start debating bills. And I think we adjourned at midnight and then reconvened at 12:15 in the morning for a brand new legislative day to debate a budget and pass it at 2 a.m.
So the point of that, even though this says it has to be on the calendar 3 days, it was only really visible in the House for less than 25 hours, right? From Wednesday night at 11:45 until Saturday morning. I think I got the math right here. It's not very.
It was less than it was basically 48 hours,
yeah.
but they played with the legislative session days.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to close this calendar out, even though there was, appropriations hearings all spring, there was some working group hearings in the final 2 to 3 weeks when the negotiations got heated up. No Republicans there, and when you talk to Democrats the last week or 10 days, they didn't even know what was going on with the budget process. Right, the ones I'd bump into, what's going on? Well, we don't know anything.
Right. Yeah. There was this very, very small group of people,
right,
that evidently working with the governor's office, probably Andy Minar and a few folks, and even they couldn't get it right, as you can see here.
Right. So, I'm sure they're concerned, Dan, about the coming recession. Of course, the White House keeps redefining, or the media, of course, it's the willing accomplices in the media. They keep defining what a recession is. But I'm not sure they were concerned about any economic downturns. I don't think they're concerned about a recession, right?
No, I don't know. And maybe some of the inside folks are, but this is the governor. Wants to run for president, and members of the General Assembly and the Democratic caucus, they want their stipends increased, and they want their projects in their district, and they want to be able to walk around and tell everybody what great people they are because they got all this stuff for them. I don't know. I mean, your slide here is really what I call this slide. All the reasons why, we didn't vote for this budget. I mean, it's not all of them, but it is a big part of it.
Right.
And, this slide really could be another 3 pages. I don't know what's behind here, how many more you have to go. But I mean, this, you want to walk through this thing.
Right. Well, this is our only slide. We just, Colin was nice enough to find a few bullet points here. Again, this is a record span, $50.6 billion record span. And guys, I think since Governor Pritzker came in, this number has went up, by 25%? I think was it the budget when he came in from the prior administration was maybe 37 billion?
Right. Yeah, no, it's gone up, $14 billion. I mean, that's, that's 20 some odd percent.
Right.
Hey,
All
here's
while we lose, all while we've lost, hundreds of thousands of people worth of revenue, and we somehow magically have more money than we ever have, and that all that can possibly mean is a tax increase.
well, there's yes. I mean, but you look at this budget, okay? That number isn't accurate. It's not accurate because it doesn't include the other $500 million plus 600 million or $700 million for the healthcare, illegal immigrant healthcare.
Right.
That's going to get spent.
Right.
It doesn't include the $300 million pay raise for Ask Me.
Right.
So now there's another $1.5 billion that's not in that 5.6, and Lord knows what else.
Right.
And
So yeah.
So it's more like it's like $52 billion.
Right.
And our revenue is probably going to be, I'm going to guess, somewhere around 48 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
And I'm just, kind of ballparking this stuff. So we're a mere $4 billion upside down. The other part of this is why we didn't vote for the budget. The actuaries told us that we needed to put another $4 billion into the pension plans to meet their obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So we put the money in, but we're $4 billion short of what we should have put in because we don't have it.
Right.
So what did the governor do? Well, he put an extra 200 million in.
Right.
That's 200 million against 4 billion. We're $3.8 billion short on what the actuary said we should have contributed
Mm-hmm.
to our pension plan just to keep the thing going.
Well, and what's so frustrating about that, Dan, is we had the chance during COVID to be one of the many states that could have paid off a significant chunk of that debt. And of course we didn't do it, but we have money to pay for things like Black Lives Matter grants out of ARPA money.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and that's really what's sad. And I mean, that's why even though it was, we had to look at the bill a little bit longer than usually a 1 hour arrangement in the past, you start to find all this stuff like $300,000 to Black Lives Matter in Lake County or McHenry County, wherever it was. And there's line after line of pork or, I mean, why should the taxpayers of the state of Illinois fund Black Lives Matter in any one county, or doesn't matter, a state, doesn't matter. Why is that the responsibility of the taxpayers of the state to do that?
We could go through 3,409 pages, and spend the next 6 months every day just picking one thing out of the budget that is not, should not be the state government's purview.
Right.
We'd be good. One of the other things that we heard over and over again in the budget presentation and discussion, that we've been upgraded. How many times, Colin? 6 times or something?
Eight upgrades. I'm gonna quote leader Gordon Booth. 8 upgrades and looking for 9.
Yeah. So we've had 8 upgrades in our credit rating in the past couple of years, right?
That's reported, yes.
And we are still tied with New Jersey for the worst credit rated state in the nation. So we've moved up from the worst to tied with New Jersey for the worst. So we need that 9th upgrade to leapfrog over New Jersey and only be, well, I guess it depends on the 52nd or 51st worst state. I don't know. Sorry. It's an old joke there.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if Puerto Rico's in that figure or not.
No, Washington, D.C.,
or
Puerto
Washington,
Rico, who
DC.
knows what they're scheming about. But yeah, so they brag about all these credit upratings, and we're still the worst credit risk of any state in the nation.
Right.
Now we get one more uprating and we'll be 49 out of 50. What an accomplishment. I'm telling you, bring on the band. Let's have a parade.
Well, and you have to ask yourself, how do you achieve that? How do you reach a point where you're like that? And to go back to the comments about a recession, how do you get to the worst credit rating in the country? Well, you have a legislature who acts like they're not concerned over things like a recession. And
Yeah.
to answer the question about do we think legislators are concerned over a recession? Well, no, they're not, because they have the ability to vote themselves pay raises. I mean, there are only a handful of Democrat legislators who will not be making over $100,000 after this new pay raise, whenever you consider committee stipends and leadership positions. So no, why would they be concerned over a recession? They can tax you and raise their salaries. So
Right.
when a state acts like that, I mean, again, Dan said this in a floor speech, that a government that is ran like this, if it was this is the behavior that's landed many a lawmaker in prison.
Right. It would. Yeah, no, this would, no business could do this.
Right.
I mean, there's nobody. There's Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, all our neighbors. They're not doing this. They're not doing this.
Hey,
So,
let's talk about budget gimmickry, and then we're going to touch on our last bullet point here, and then we're going to maybe kind of wind this down. So, the healthcare for illegal aliens went from a few $1 million just a few years ago to the end of March. It was estimated to be 400 or 500 million, and then just a few weeks ago, 1.1 or 1.2 billion. But the gimmickry in this budget, guys, was they give the governor some emergency powers to manage the additional expense. They only said, we're only going to put 500 million in the budget for this healthcare item, but they give the governor powers to deal with the other. So they're kind of admitting, right, it's going to be higher than the 500 million.
Yeah. And that's just one of the gimmicks.
Mm-hmm.
They stood on the House floor and bragged about the fact that they were giving, the direct service personnel in our group homes and in our nursing homes a $2.50 pay raise. Well, the task force that looked into that recommended a $4 minimum pay raise to keep up with inflation, the cost of living, competition from other employers. So not only did we ignore the recommendations of their own task force that they participated in, they only did it for a half a year. So that $2.50 pay raise doesn't kick in till January 1st. So it miraculously, our most critical employees, when it comes to taking care of developmentally disabled, our elderly, we have counselors and psychologists and all of that. They're going to get a pay raise, but you got to hold on till January 1st to get it. You can't, because we don't have any money to give you a full year. We have $50 billion budget, and we don't have a couple of million to actually give the people the pay raise that they deserve.
Right.
On top of that, and then you're going to go to the bottom.
Yeah.
Let's just jump right down to it.
Yeah. So the Invest in Kids program was a pretty big deal. Started less than 5 years ago, or about 5 years ago. Wildly successful program. Colin, I don't remember the exact numbers, but is there like 9,000?
9,000 kids that were currently in the program, over 40,000 scholarships given out over its lifetime, and I think 22,000 students waitlisted because the program is so successful, everyone wants in it. And by the way, they're majority disadvantaged Black and brown kids.
Right. And their income poverty, their home income level is basically at poverty or just above poverty. I don't know how the feds, they keep changing it because I don't know what the deal is.
Right.
Yeah. So here is a wildly popular program.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost the government $75 million in lost revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it costs.
Mm-hmm.
So what is $75 million in $50.6 billion?
Right.
What is it? Paper
Right.
clips, maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and again, we're providing health care for people that are coming into this country, coming into this state illegally to the tune of 1.1 or 1.2 billion dollars forecasted this coming fiscal year.
Yeah, but what about the welcoming centers?
Right. That and the city
what was it, 20 some million dollars in
right.
welcoming. We're going to have welcoming centers
Right.
for these illegals.
Right.
That we don't know who they are. I mean, they're just turning them loose at the border.
Right. And the city of Chicago is forecast to put another $280 million into housing and other things for this same population as it continues to expand. So, I mean, this is the numbers, Dan. I mean, I don't know when we'll get done counting what all the cost to this invasion is really going to amount to. And then if we start talking about crime and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know, we had Jaco Booyans on the other day talking about the sex trafficking and that cost, the human toll to the people. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yep.
And education, because these minors, you know, they belong in school. So now they're going to be going to school, and we're going to be feeding them and taking care of them and providing them health care. They're going to have to get immunized. They're going to have all of the you know, the things that they need to go to school. It's mind-boggling.
Right. Let me flip the last slide, and as we go to that, Colin, any closing comments or thoughts before we close out tonight's live stream?
But yeah, I have one kind of closing thought, and it's on this immigrant healthcare. You know, $550 million. And the reasoning that they claim it's not over $1 billion is because the governor is going to do cost-saving measures to lower the cost of this health care to the immigrants. That's somehow going to make it less than $1 billion. The only thing I can think of the governor has ever done for cost saving is pulling bathrooms out of his house. So maybe we'll see bathrooms come out of the state buildings to pay for illegal immigrant health care. I don't know. But when the governor says that we have tools in the BIMP to manage this program, it just makes me a little bit concerned. But nevertheless, I'm thankful for the Illinois Freedom Caucus being the conservative North Star General Assembly, fighting for truth, logic, and common sense.
Exactly. Thank you, Colin, and thank you for all your help getting us through the spring session. It was just a crazy several weeks there, and hopefully it's put to bed for now, and we live to do battle another day. Dan Calkins, closing thoughts, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Look forward to getting together with everybody here soon. I know Colin has put together a pretty ambitious schedule for us this summer. We'll be out all up and down the state. And I think we're going to have a fundraiser here coming up this summer as well to help keep the Illinois Freedom Caucus plugged in, moving forward, support some of our initiatives, and it's going to be a good summer and a busy summer. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, guys. And guys, we should have, if we're back on, if everything comes together, Sunday night, and then next week, we'll have a lot of announcements as far as the town halls that Dan's talking about. I know I'm scheduling several of them in the 107, and with my neighboring reps, Dan, you and I think are going to do one in Decatur later in June. And I guess as a Freedom Caucus, we'll do some across the state. And Colin, you're helping us with all those dates. And so with that, guys, we are going to head for the exits. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and follow and subscribe to our content. Thank you.